And then, yeah, so that honestly, for my parents, they don't even like doing the big turkey anymore. For the past several years, they've been getting smaller and smaller amounts of turkey to the point where this year they didn't even get. I think they just got a chicken. It was a chicken like the size of your hand. Maybe the size of my hand.
So it's almost like a Cornish hen.
Yeah, it was super small, and it was like a token dish for a couple people. That's it. Just to say we got the dead bird on the table,
Sounds like a very good meal. Now, turkey's overrated. We had turkey back when my grandmother was alive and everything, and my mother and whatnot. Like, we used to have like turkey a couple years, but it was mainly ham, and I vastly preferred ham over turkey. I'd eat either, but I much prefer ham. I feel like turkey is one of those. Turkey is such a laborious thing to make, and ham takes time and everything, but turkey's a laborious thing to thaw. And then I feel like no matter what you do with turkey, it gets cold way too quickly because it's so lean.
Yeah.
I feel like you could microwave it for 5 minutes and then it would get cold in 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt that way about turkey, but I'm glad you had a good Thanksgiving. We made a ton of food for ourselves and stuff like that. I made lobster tails. So wanted an excuse to have lobster. Anytime we can do that, I'm always game for that. But
lobster for Thanksgiving, that's like a Florida Thanksgiving right there.
Sounds like an East Coast Thanksgiving in a way too.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, had some lobster tails. It was a very good time. And I would say this too. I'll tell you right now, going back to what you're saying about white people Thanksgivings. You know what I absolutely love, and I eat this shit year round. I absolutely love stovetop stuffing. There's no reason to make homemade stuffing anymore. Stovetop is the best.
Effing true. I love stuffing. I genuinely do. And it's like, yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. How do you even? What is the traditional way to make stuffing? It's you gotta get the bread and then break it down.
Celery,
sure,
bunch of different stuff. Like, man, that stovetop stuffing, I'll eat that shit in May.
Yeah,
like I think it's delicious. I mean.
live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. We are not reunited as a trio, but I'm reunited for the first time in weeks seeing this gentleman right here. He is Joe Viso. He is back hosting the show. I'm grateful to see you, my friend. It has been too long. How are you today, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to finally sit in front of this camera, get to talk to you. I wish Dom could be here because
Same.
it'd just be nice to have a trio of people. Who knows if next week we'll have the full crew or not. We also got to finalize what the hell we're seeing next week. I know there is something on the schedule, but I wanted to make sure we didn't have anything else in mind. But yeah, man, it sucks that we can't be a full crew. I think, was Dom there for the Will and Harper review, or is that just you?
Yes, it was the three of us.
So that was the last review we did when it was the three of us. That's crazy because for a while it was just me and Dom. Then it was just you and Dom. Then it went back to me and Dom, and then it was you and Dom, and I had a 10-minute cameo last week. But yeah, we haven't done a full show top to bottom as the trio in a while.
Yeah, we were temporarily reunited last week, which felt very good to talk about Wicked.
Yeah.
What's shaping up to be one of the biggest movies of the year as we speak. Still continues to do completely insane numbers at the box office and things like that. We're kind of still doubling back, playing a little bit of catch up, just because so much shit came out around Thanksgiving, as is typical, and then it's got great staying power.
It's that Thanksgiving thing that I've noticed lately, and we talked about this way back when with the House of Gucci, where it's around Thanksgiving now, they seem to release these movies that's okay, we'll release something for the family with young kids, then we'll release something for a young adult crowd, and then we'll release something for the mature crowd, which, was Moana, going in order of what I said, Moana, Wicked, and now Gladiator 2.
Right, and we talked about it. I don't know if you were on the show when we talked about it, but I said what they did was, and selfishly I liked it because it helped me out with scheduling, but I also just really like what they did. If you notice, Thanksgiving was the latest possible date it could have been last year.
I saw
28th.
that part of the show, yeah.
Yeah, it was actually the latest day. That's the latest Thanksgiving can be because it's the fourth Thursday of the month. And the way the schedule shaped out, then what they did was, if you remember, the only new movie on Thanksgiving to be released was Moana 2. Gladiator and Wicked came out the week prior. And they let those movies come out the week prior and then let them breathe over the Thanksgiving haul. And there really still isn't much stiff competition.
And it was great too, because releasing those movies, I got to see Wicked ahead of time. And Thanksgiving week happened and Black Friday rolled around. And I did a double feature on Black Friday, which I haven't done in a while, but because I was you know what, screw it. I'm going to go catch up on some movies. I got Wicked out for the show, even though I couldn't be part of it. It was still let me do it just in case. Plus, I wanted to see the damn thing. But I was let me knock out Gladiator 2, and I'm screw it. I'm just going to spend the whole day at the movies and actually enjoy my day off and everything. And I got to go see Juror number 2.
Lucky you. One of the 10 people that saw that in theaters. Lucky you.
It surprisingly too, man, sold out show. By the time I sat down and everything, trailer done, as the lights were dimming, I just took one last look behind me, and it was sold out show. All the seats had someone in it. I was fucking, Zaslav doesn't think this thing will sell well, but it's potentially the last Clint Eastwood movie. It's you'll get some people there opening weekend. Especially if you're doing a holiday weekend.
I just looked. That fucking thing, despite being... I don't know what the theater count is. I gotta look. I just looked. Because I didn't even really follow the box office on that one. Kind of an oversight on my end. That thing made $19 million.
Yeah! That's a pretty good fucking amount of money.
For a movie they tried to bury.
That was probably... and I'm telling you right now, after seeing the movie, that movie's budget would be at most, $15 million. Or at least minimum $15 million. I can see Mo being maybe 25. It is not a high budget movie. It's definitely making its money back and a little then some.
I'm trying to see here. So, $19 million, that was worldwide. It grossed over the opening weekend. It grossed $270,000 in 35 theaters in the United States, which is
Wow.
pretty damn good. Which is pretty damn good for what was such a limited ass release.
Yeah, honestly.
Man, they
$35
really
million.
screwed him. They
$35
really
million is
screwed him.
how that movie costs.
They screwed him and they screwed themselves. Like, that whole thing is mystifying to me. That whole thing is just completely mystifying to me.
I really don't get it, man. I really don't.
And on one hand, Zaslav wants to be like, oh, we want to preserve the theatrical experience. That's why we put garbage like Blue Beetle in theaters when it was supposed to go to HBO Max. And it's like, well, then why the hell didn't you give this its just due? Even if you didn't want to do a full-blown 4,000 theater release on this thing, I get it. But you couldn't have put it in like 1,500?
Well, you see
It's Clint
Dom.
Eastwood.
I mean, you see Dom. You see Steve. Blue Beetle is a superhero movie, so I'm gonna make sure I make my money back with that.
God.
But a courtroom
stupid.
drama? Hell no. I ain't gonna make money.
And that's the kind of movie, too, that would have done like football numbers in the 90s. That's the funny thing.
Yeah.
That thing would have been that thing would be a staple on the USA Network. It'd be one of your dad's 10 favorite movies. You know what I mean? It'd be like the kind of flypaper movie that when you see it on TV, you stop and watch it. Like, that's actually an industry term I learned a while ago. Flypaper. That's what like these like syndicated networks can call movies because they let people. I think I did it when I wrote my review of Roadhouse because the original Roadhouse was the most watched movie on cable TV for a number of years.
Yeah.
The original Roadhouse.
And that's why I also like Family Guy made fun of it because Seth, not Seth Meyer, or is it Seth Meyer? Seth MacFarlane. Thank you. Yeah, he talked about how he saw that movie on TV almost every day.
Yeah, it's a reference people get and stuff. I always wanted to make, real quick, and then we'll talk Gladiator. I always wanted to make a letterbox list, but never did. I want to make a letterbox list, and I've had this in my head for years, like movies that are always on. It can be 2 a.m, it can be 4 p.m, and movies that are always on. Goodfellas, Shawshank Redemption, Roadhouse, Meet the Parents, Hitch. Like, those movies are always on TV.
If you ever make that list, please send it to me because I can definitely recommend a few that come to mind.
Yeah, Meet the Parents is a good one. You'll probably see that more. I think they're making another sequel to that damn thing.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
Wow. What the hell is it going to be about?
That I never saw the third one, that Little Fockers. I never did. But man, I'm not the biggest fan of those movies. I thought those movies were stupid. I really did.
I like the first one. I don't love it. I don't get why it became the sensation that it did. But my mom loves it. So I saw Meet the Fockers in theaters. And then I had to take her to go see Meet the Little Fockers or Little Fockers, whatever the hell it's called. And let me tell you, man, Little Fockers is one of the most fucking... Man... They just come up with conflict out of nowhere in that movie. It's just like, are we really repeating these same themes and issues from the first movie this many years later? Like, are you serious? Like, they just making stuff up. To hear that they're doing a fourth one, it's like, come on, man. Almost everybody here has something better to do now. Stiller's directing his own stuff. De Niro's he's actually been in good stuff for a while now. Let's just keep it that way. What the hell?
Streisand is ancient.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never cared for those movies, and I always thought it was ridiculous too, like the Meet the Fockers. Even as a kid, I was like, oh my god, they made his last name Focker. Like, really, that's the brow of humor with this thing. What's fucking crazy though, fucking crazy if you will. Take a wild guess, the worldwide gross, how much money Meet the Fockers made.
Oh, dude, I believe it's 175 million.
Not even close.
Wow.
$522 million.
I don't get it, man. I just don't get it.
Not even close. I would have probably guessed 200 million. 500 million. Little Fockers made 300 million.
Are you serious? Man, that the Fokker franchise is that's got some staying power.
I'm really stunned they never made another one after that. That was a fucking cash cow.
Hey man, they were waiting. They waited. They saw what every other studio was doing. They said, our time will come, 2026. You'll be there, how many years later since we made another Fokker movie.
When it comes to puns on names and stuff, give me Officer Krupke from West Side Story any day of the week over the friggin' Fockers. But yeah, I like what you said. Everybody in that movie has something better to do. That is too
man.
That is too true. We'll jump into Gladiator 2 today. We'll jump in and talk about this movie. I kind of wish I would have went back and watched. It was really just a time thing. I really wish I would have went back and watched the original Gladiator before this.
I wish I did too.
I knew enough. I'll tell you right now, one of my more unpopular film opinions that I've noticed over the years, I don't care for the original Gladiator. I really don't. I think it's a ridiculously fucking overrated movie. I think it's a movie. I think what happened was during the time it came out in the dawn of the new decade and the dawn of the new century, rather, I think it was like the first of a brand new millennium. And it was the first of its kind in a long time. And at the time, it was like, I think, the most expensive for its genre.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hyped at the level of what a big superhero movie would be now, like Deadpool versus Wolverine. It was hyped at such a level that it became this like sensation. And when I watched it in high school for the first time, it was like the end of high school. And I remember thinking, this is a very basic template revenge story with a good Russell Crowe performance, a ridiculously over-the-top
Joaquin Phoenix
performance, and a movie that, I'm not going to lie, is ugly as sin to look at for 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's down there with Green Book and Crash as probably the worst Best Picture winner of the last 25 years. I wouldn't say it's a bad movie, but I think it's ridiculously overrated, and I think it's a movie that like came out at the right time and did not have a lot of other comparable like genre touchstones. It would not make my top 5, maybe not even my it wouldn't make my top 10 for Ridley Scott as a whole.
Oh wow, okay.
I don't think it would make my top 10. I actually liked Gladiator 2 a little bit more.
Wow, okay.
That's where I'm at. Where do you stand on Gladiator?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in a long time either, and I really wish I did see it before watching this one, because despite all the interviews saying, "Nah, if you haven't seen the first Gladiator, you'll be okay," this movie kind of stands on its own. It doesn't really call back to that first one. Let me tell you right now, if you haven't seen the first Gladiator and you plan on going to see Gladiator 2, you better watch that shit. I'm not gonna say how it connects, but I went, okay. I mean, I see the connections, but. No, there's some, especially as the longer the movie goes on, the more it actually connects to that first movie. But for me, even though I haven't seen it in a while, top 5 Ridley Scott, probably not for me, but definitely top 10. It is a movie I very much enjoy. It's mainly due to Russell Crowe's performance. It's one of my favorites of his. I do think that, the spectacle of the film too is pretty cool. Like, I thought it was shot very well and everything. It is an ugly looking movie. I almost felt like, see, the thing was, the last time I saw it, I saw it in high school as well. And this was me, like, studying film for, like, the very first time. And I thought, like, it was intentional that it was shot that way, to be ugly and kind of dirty looking and everything. But I bet if I go back now and watch it, maybe I will have a different outcome, because, I very much have seen, like, movies that look ugly, and it's like, no, that wasn't intentional. It's just an ugly looking movie. And then I see movies that are shot ugly and dirty, like The Northman from Robert Eggers, or soon to be Nosferatu, which that's going to be a dirty looking movie, but it's done on purpose. That's part of the art of it. But it's definitely one of my top 10, definitely for Ridley Scott. I don't know where, but it's probably like the higher side of it, maybe 6 or 7. But I do enjoy the movie.
Yeah, like it gets a lot of effusive praise. I honestly think a better Ridley Scott movie of the same ilk. I like Kingdom of Heaven more. I like The Last Duel more.
I love Last Duel's top 5 for me. I love that movie.
I agree. That movie was so damn slept on, like when that thing came out, and then I remember seeing it on like video on demand. I think I rented it. I rented it on Vudu, and I think I let you guys know.
I was the one that told you guys about it. I'm like, guys, we have to review this, or at least talk about it.
And I said at the time too, I said, I am pissed I didn't see this in theaters.
Yeah,
because I kind of blew it off.
Looking movie too.
It is. It's gorgeous. Like I remember like some of the effects they did, like with the snow falling, like and stuff like that. Like you don't really get movies like that set in snow,
Actually, you know
which
what?
I thought
A
was cool.
good, ugly looking movie, like it's beautiful to look at, but it's ugly at times and dirty, but in a good way, is that movie.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not all ugly though. It's very beautiful in some scenes. Like
Yeah.
even as gray as it is, it's very overcast. Like the original Gladiator was like brown and murky and muddy, where this was just like very just like overcast but pretty. Last Duel. I even
Yeah.
mentioned it in my review of Gladiator too. I hold that movie in extremely high regard. But as far as Gladiator 2 is concerned, I will admit I was more amused than I thought I was by this. Like it recycles a lot of beats from the original. It's got the framework very similar to the original, and it's got plot points that are very similar. The question with this movie, though, was obviously, spoiler alert, 24 years later, Maximus dies at the end of the first Gladiator. So it's like,
Well, they
how
show
are
that
they
in the
going?
opening credits too.
Like they do. It's like, well, what were they going to do with this movie? Like, what were they going to do? And instead, now the movie revolves around Lucius, played by Paul Mescal, and he leads sort of a defense in the opening scene against General Acacius. I'm trying to remember how to say his name. It's Pedro Pascal in the opening scene, and then it winds up being the main villain, who is so damn good in this thing, is Denzel, is Macrinus. He
Yeah.
is so good in this. We're going to talk probably extensively about him. He was a former slave that then turned into like this wealthy tyrant who's looking to take over Rome and things like that. You know what I think, generally there's really not a whole lot of dense plot in this movie. What I'm really glad about this movie though, first things first, is this is a movie that really revels in its absurdity and in some scenes and really kind of just dials up the ante. It doesn't go for like a real dark kind of, Gladiator sequel as I think maybe the temptation was.
Yeah.
There is a little bit though of this movie being so belated. It's like, damn, 24 years and this is the story. There's part of that there. And I think with all these Lego sequels, especially the Lego sequels that are actually helmed by the original creator, it's different. Like the Scream movies, like the later Scream sequels, Wes Craven didn't have anything to do with, or anything like that. It's different when it's a Lego sequel or a late sequel like this that's directed and written by the same guy who did the original.
Yeah.
There's a part of you that's like, man, like you know how many rewrites this thing had to go through, how many different drafts and story ideas and things like that this thing had to go through in order to finally end up where we're at now. But I will say, if you look at this movie, as I think a lot of people are going to look at this movie, as a spectacle driven epic, I do think you get your money's worth in a handful of scenes. There's some pretty good staging here of some really ridiculous set pieces.
I agree with everything you just said. You can literally Control C, Control V. Earlier this year, George Miller returned to the wasteland for probably the last time. With Furiosa, and again, legacy sequel, legacy prequel, whatever you want to call it. It was great to see him go back again, both with Fury Road and Furiosa, and like get to tap into that and really do make something of a spectacle. And it's still great to see like a filmmaker like George Miller, as old as he is, can still kick that much ass. And the same can be said for Ridley Scott. Granted, not every movie he releases lately has been that, but it's still great to see a guy his age is still able to every once in a while, even this movie, deliver something on a grand scale and still have that energy to it. Like he's still a young filmmaker almost. The best way to put it is the image I'm flying up on screen right now for our viewers of the Colosseum filled with water as two ships fight each other and there's sharks in the water if you look closely. If you look at that image and you say, I want to go see that, you're in for a good time. If you look at that image and you're pointing out the flaws of how the hell that is possible in ancient Rome, this is probably not your movie. Yeah, in terms of story, there's little to none here. And that's probably the biggest disappointment I have with that. Because while the first movie's story, I do think is, like Steve said at the opening of this, basic revenge story, it's its characters that do keep you interested and involved from beginning to end. And I do really like Russell Crowe's performance in that movie as well, and it helps like keep you centered. And it's not that Paul Mescal's bad in this. No one's really bad in this, but none of their characters are really fleshed out at all. Pedro Pascal's character is not really that fleshed out. Paul Mescal really isn't. The Emperor twins aren't really fleshed out at all. I've seen the comparison of calling them the Beavis and Butthead of emperors, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of see that a little bit. Sure,
I put that in my review too.
You did?
I actually said they're Romulus and Remus cosplaying Beavis and Butthead.
Like they're not, but again, it's not like they're really that bad. It's just like, okay, like, they're actors and they're doing their best job with everything they're given. It's just
they
that
kind of looked like those feral cretins from Fury Road, actually.
he did actually, yeah. No, honestly, they reminded me of that. They reminded me a little bit like the War Boys or those guys as well.
War Boys. I couldn't think of the name.
The only person here that really I feel like has an arc, and you're interested to see where their alliance is and how their story's going to play out, is Denzel Washington's character. And it's mainly because, one, the backstory that he has at the beginning of the movie and what you find out, but two, the longer the movie goes on, you wonder if his interests are in best favor for Paul Mescal, for Lucius, or for himself. And, as the movie plays out, you slowly discover what. And, I mean, one, Denzel Washington, I mean, he's going to act his ass off. He's a high caliber actor. He's one of the best there is out there. And he's acting circles around almost everybody else in scenes that he is. And I've seen people say, well, there's moments in the movie where he just acts like Denzel. But you know what? It added so much more character to his character. Because everybody else is so serious and everything that no one really stands out, I feel like. Like, even though I thought Pedro Pascal, like, great performance, he doesn't stand too far apart in terms of, like, oh, what did he bring compared to Paul Mescal? It's like, really not that much. They just brought a good, serious performance. It's good enough for what this movie needs them to be. But Denzel, I feel like, just him sometimes acting like Denzel, but also having that dramatic flair to him as well. He brought something to this movie that, at least beginning to end, I was always glued to the screen when he was on. When he wasn't on and there wasn't any action happening, my mind started to wander a bit because I just kind of got bored at what I was watching play out. In terms of a revenge story too, it's like there's not really much of a revenge happening here. In fact, it gets resolved even before the climax, and you were just like, wait, that's all it took? Like, seriously? Like, damn it, Zoom, I'm not raising my hand. It's like, wow, that's seriously all we had to do in order to resolve this whole issue. That's kind of weak, honestly. I'm a little disappointed in how that, because like everything you saw about this like was promoting like, oh, the duel between these two, and it's like it's not really what this movie's about by the end of it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there too, and I think the only problem too with Denzel being as great as he is and as commanding and as like fearful as he is in this movie is that it's kind of the same issue as the new Dune movies, is that like your protagonist is often the least interesting person on the screen.
Yeah.
And he's so good, Denzel, he like usurps Paul Mescal in terms of interest. Because like I thought, and I think you agree, the peak interest of this movie is when the movie revolves around Macronus.
Yeah.
When the movie revolves around Denzel's character, he is so attention commanding and he's so thrilling and unpredictable that he like sucks the air sort of out of Mescal, who's the lesser known actor.
I'm glad you said that because, and I hate doing this too, I've done this with a few movies that were, this was Scream, where I wrote a better movie, in my opinion, in my head, because of just how the movie like was presented at some points, and I'm like, well, this would have worked out way better. Originally, when this movie was first drafted, Denzel was supposed to be the main character, but this was supposed to be like a Western too, as well. Like Gladiator 2 was going to be like a whole different movie. And then finally Ridley Scott was like, no, I'm just going to make a straight up sequel. But I still thought to myself, I'm like, why wasn't Denzel the main character? Because honestly, it would have been cool to watch him go from slave to where he was at now. And honestly, I think Paul Mescal would have worked better as a supporting character that you find out through twists is the son of Maximus. and you're like, oh shit, like this is the connection to the first movie and everything, and it could still play out the way it does in terms of like how these characters end up and everything. But I think this movie would have been so much better if you followed Denzel's character, if you followed the villain from beginning to end. I think that would have been a better movie, and it would have had better twists and turns with its prizes too.
Such a great take. I'm going to steal it, but give you credit.
Go ahead.
No, that's a really well done take right there, because I completely agree, because Denzel's backstory is kind of more just told rather than shown.
Yeah.
And on paper, though, it's like, well, how did this guy really go from point A to point Z as far away as it was?
He's got to be pulling some backstabbing shit, because I mean, he does a little bit of it here and there throughout the movie. You're just thinking like, well, how much did he do to get to here, though?
He's got a Furiosa level compelling
really does.
like origin story as far as his life is concerned. And like you said, then I think Mescal, you could have still installed the same twist. It's like it's a twist revealed like 40 minutes into the movie that you said. But like, you still could have had it be like that, and then it's like a double gut punch to the legacy of Maximus.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. Like that's the better movie of this. Right there. And it loans credence too to the Denzel Washington, just being, I think, the most interesting person in the whole movie.
Yeah.
The one who keeps your attention.
It just would have been better like something like star like that. You even see him in the pits. And then you have a better understanding than when he does buy Paul Mescal as his gladiator and everything to put in the arena. And, you might be like, oh, he might still have like, something. But then when he finds out who he's related to, and he's like, oh, he's part, like now he's a threat to me. Like, it's like, I'm going to make moves to get to the throne. And this kid actually might have a claim to it and all this stuff. God, man, it's all I thought, like on the drive home, was thinking like, dude, like there was a better movie there, and I kind of wish Ridley did see it in some sort of way. But when you watch the movie, you see what Ridley was focused on, and it's the spectacle of this movie, because this movie does look awesome. Like, it was cool seeing the arena fights in this, and just the look of ancient Rome. And yeah, I mean, when you go back and you watch Gladiator 1, it doesn't look as good as this. The camera work is so much better. The use of color is so much better. Everything in terms of visuals is better in this movie than Gladiator 1, for sure.
Completely agree. Completely agree right there. I think this movie is definitely just a better looking movie. You mentioned what the defining scene of this whole thing is going to be the shark infested waters of the Colosseum.
Yeah.
And the ship duel.
It's such a smart way
awesome.
that it's just a smart way they do the action too in that. Like, it's not like, because I was thinking like, okay, it's gonna be like this big action sequence, but it's like no, actually how they win that fight is actually like really genius. And it's like, wow, that was cool.
It's smart and brutal, and there's like nothing they can do.
Yeah,
like it really is cockamamie and as stupid as it ultimately is. They really though made it like you convey like the toughness and the brutality of the Colosseum atmosphere, the helplessness of the weaker opponent.
Yeah.
Like you get everything that you desire in that scene that revolves around ancient Rome.
Yeah.
You know who I think is, what were we saying? Go on.
I was gonna say, one of my friends even said like, there's no way they did that in ancient Rome, and I was like, I'm like, there's no way. Yeah, no, there's no way they kept sharks like in tanks and everything. There's no way they did it. But then I told them, however, how that scene was executed made me let it slide by, because it's like, yeah, as ridiculous as that is, it's done so damn good that I was like, it's directed so well, the tension's great, and like everything else you're saying is there. It's just like I let it slide by. I know so many people who are harping up on that scene and all the historical accuracies of these movies, but I know how Ridley Scott's been, and he's just kind of been like, hey, look, I don't care about that stuff anymore. I want to make a movie, and if I think it'll be cool for the movie to do this, I'm doing it. And at the age that he's at, I can't blame him. He's like, you know what, dude, I just want to make my movies.
Oh, absolutely. I was laughing too, because I was thinking about during that shark scene, I was like, well, where the hell did they get the sharks? Like, how far is the nearest port? How far is the nearest port in order to get the damn sharks? Like, and then to have them submerged and the equipment that you would need. Like, it's obviously not a movie or not a scene that you bring that kind of logic to, but it's just kind of funny to entertain yourself and just be like, how the hell did they get them damn sharks in there?
I just can't wait for kids to go back to school and be like reporting on ancient Rome and just do like, yeah, sharks in the water.
Before we cut to break, you know who I really liked in this movie, and I think I see him getting no credit like whatsoever. Because he's he's a supporting performer, but he has like 3 scenes, like 3 decent,
Is
like
it like
three like
the doctor?
yes,
Yeah, he's so good, dude.
Alexander Karim is his name. He plays Robbie. He's the retired gladiator from India
Yeah.
who got his freedom and then elected to serve as a doctor and a medical advisor to like current gladiators. And he's obviously a device to like instill wisdom on Lucius. He's obviously that sort of, mentor figure and stuff. But you know what? Like, a character like this could have been spoon-fed a lot shittier lines and a lot more cliches and everything. And I don't know. Alexander Karim just has like this gravity and this perceptiveness to the role that really, and I think brings out the best in Mescal in those scenes too.
He does. He does. The best scenes of Mescal are the scenes he shares with him. There's this look that, what's the actor's name again?
Alexander Karim.
There's this look Alexander Karim has as the character. A shout out to the makeup costume designers for like doing this as well, and Alexander just helps sell it even more. But like, it's like by just looking at him, you feel like the years of him being a gladiator. You feel like, the damage that has been done to him. And even the way he delivers lines, it's like, there's pauses at some of the words he says. He cracks jokes, but like the joke crack has such a dark undertone. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's definitely seen some shit. Like, it's just like, wow, like, such a small character, but leaves such a big impact.
Karim is younger than you probably think too. He's only 48.
Oh wow. Okay.
I thought he was going to be older than that. He's 48, which just goes to show you the makeup and costuming design, which will probably get an Oscar nomination if I'm being completely honest here. Karim is great though. He's so arresting in this role. And I think he was, of all, like, because there's a few returning people and stuff like that too. You have Connie Nelson's back. You have a few returning people from the original Gladiator, but I'm like, man, this is the guy that I like a lot. Like, I just, and like I said too, in a guy that is consistently, to no fault of his own, just one-upped by a seasoned veteran iconic actor playing the villain in Mescal, just being one-up by Denzel, just by virtue that Denzel is one of the greatest actors of his generation. It was nice that with Karim, it felt like when he had shared scenes with Mescal, that he could bring a little bit more personality and sort of like, humanity to Karim's character that is tough for Mescal to find on his own. Also too, I'm just gonna say this real quick too. My God, is it friggin' confusing too when you have a movie that stars both Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. I was like, you guys did that on purpose.
My God, was this confusing too? Like for a second, like you really got like just like the name jumbler on that too. But no, I liked him a lot. I'm glad you agree.
Yeah. No, like I said, I mean, there's enough to like here in the movie. It's just like, I just feel like I said, the characters and the storylines, which there's at least 3 of them. There's an A, B, and C plot going on here. But really, yeah, Denzel's the only plot. And later on, there's kind of like a D plot that's introduced between the 2 Emperor brothers, but that kind of gets intersected into Denzel's as well. But like the other plots other than Denzel, they really don't have that much weight to them at all. And like I said, like the resolution to Lucius's plot of like what drove him to like fight as hard as he did and everything, it's like, that wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. The third act too. The third act is good. It's a good third act, but like, again, it's a good third act because Denzel then becomes just the primary focus of it. And it's like, it becomes his show and everything practically. And Mescal, like, he is the main character and everything, but it's like they very much have Denzel take lead in the third act, and then like, we have a big, epic fight scene and everything. It is, I hate to reveal it so early, but like to me, this is kind of one of the more disappointing movies I've seen this year. Not a bad movie at all. Not a bad movie. Don't let me deter you from that. But I had very high hopes going into this thing. Everything I saw of it, I was like, this looks awesome. And after coming off The Last Duel, and even though I wasn't crazy about Napoleon, there was a lot I liked about it. And I was like, you know what? I bet he's going to stick the landing here with Gladiator 2. And it just sucks to see it's like, he kind of did, but he also kind of fumbled along the way too.
No expectations equals no disappointment. Like, you consider my lukewarm reaction
there you
to the original
go, yeah.
Gladiator. So I didn't have any real expectations to like seeing this thing because I don't hold the original in a particularly high regard, as you noticed. So I didn't have any really expectations going in. It's one of my two favorite adages in life. No expectations equals no disappointment. And I break that rule all the time. I'm a Bear fan. No
Yeah.
no expectations equals no disappointment, and people can't use you if you're useless. So those are two of my favorite adages I like to use. When we come back here in a couple of minutes, this movie, and this is totally stupid. Don't put a lot of weight into this. This is totally stupid. But this thing unlocked a really like blink and you miss it memory for me
Okay.
from the show Arthur.
Okay.
And I cannot wait. I cannot wait to share it with you. You might remember how much you didn't watch it. Nobody watched Arthur as much as me as a kid, but how much Arthur did you watch?
I watched Arthur quite. I was a PBS kid, so I watched it a ton, but I do not have the memory of it like you do.
I'm gonna see if you remember. You remember this little snippet involving Buster Baxter.
Probably not.
That
It's already
that popped into my head while watching this. Okay, I'm gonna have to sing part of it too. This is gonna be fun.
Okay. All right.
Because I showed it to Catherine when we got home from Gladiator 2, and she's like, "You watch way too much Arthur." I'm like, I forgot about this even too. This has been like probably a 10-year memory lapse of this part. I mean, Jekyll and Hyde by the Brain is still in my rotation on my phone, but like this was a deep cut. This was track 8 on the worst selling album. You know what I mean? But we'll get to that, and we'll bring it home on Gladiator here, too, in just a couple of minutes. It's a great conversation happening right now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back here in just a couple of minutes. Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube.
All right.
Good stuff. Been enjoying hearing about your softball pursuits.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Gang's all here today. We're ready to talk Will and Harper, brand new documentary that is currently streaming on Netflix, was released in the middle of September. This was kind of a festival darling over at the Sundance Film Festival when it premiered back in January before being acquired for Netflix. Also had a very limited theatrical release. The movie was directed by Josh Greenbaum. That name sounds familiar. He's been pretty prolific over the last couple of years, too. He directed Barb and Stargo to Vista Del Mar, and he also last year directed Strays, which Will Ferrell was also a part of, loaned his voice to that one about the stray dog comedy. So Greenbaum's been pretty active. This is his third documentary. He did one on James Bond and one on the Dana Carvey show. So he has been pretty prolific and just pretty well-rounded, I would say, for his career. This movie has a very compelling premise right from the jump. Essentially, the movie revolves around Will Ferrell and his friend Harper Steele. Harper was born Andrew Steele and was a writer on Saturday Night Live from about 96 to 2008. So Will Ferrell describes the relationship he had at the time with Andrew, working on SNL, how Will Ferrell was kind of a little bit of an outcast on SNL, but Andrew would write different things for him. Well, eventually, time passes, and shortly into the documentary, Will Ferrell gets a letter from now Harper Steele saying that she has transitioned into being a woman. She's now transgender, come out of the closet, and is now living life as a transgender woman. So Will Ferrell decides not only to go back and reconnect with her because they haven't seen each other in a long time, but also take a 17-ish day road trip across the United States. And this is really the road trip aspect of this movie is really because Harper Steele, to quote Charles Bukowski, kind of lives like the laureate of American lowlife. Loves going to dive bars, loves like seedy, like greasy spoon restaurants, things like that. Just like quintessentially broad shoulder activities, like not only dive bars, but also like going to basketball games and sporting events and things like that. Racing as well, dirt track racing too. So it's essentially seeing as if she can still go to these places and find herself accepted as a transgender woman. That's the crux of Will and Harper. This is a very sweetly made movie. I'll say that much. Its intentions are very good. I think it's a compelling watch. One of the things that really stuck out to me, first and foremost, here's the thing. They're not going to like Chicago. They're not going to like Houston. They're not going to these big areas. They're actually going to a lot of like small to medium-sized conservative towns, which I'm not going to lie. And there's a good stretch of this movie that's set in the Midwest. I'm not gonna lie. There's some really like I love how ugly some of the B-roll was of just these like areas. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to Peoria. Oh my God, they're going to Peoria. Like, I'm like, they went to Peoria. They went to Iowa City, which is where Steele's from. They went to Iowa City, which is actually about an hour and 35 minutes away from me. Um, they go to Iowa City where she grew up. They go visit her sister. They go see her childhood home and things like that. They go to, I think one of the more, and I'll talk about this later unless you guys want to tack into it. I think one of the most interesting and sweetest sequences when they go to Meeker, Oklahoma, the dive bar out there and things like that. There's a little bit of a rocky, uncomfortable scene in Amarillo, Texas, too. So there's like they're going to a lot of these like small to medium sized cities, which is kind of a typical for a movie of this sort of caliber. Then you also have appearances from Kristen Wiig, Will Forte, Molly Shannon, things like that. I do have some misgivings about this thing. I'm not gonna lie, I do have some criticisms, but it's really hard to kind of like plant a flag in those passionately when the movie like this does have good intentions, does have some really sweet scenes, and I also think too really brings itself around in a way that's I don't want to say neat, but kind of brings itself around what Harper starts to discover about herself, and it's after without giving it away, one of the sequences is actually after she goes to the dirt track for the first time as a woman and what she comes to realize and what she processes after going to this like Confederate flag donning dive bar in Meeker, Oklahoma. What she starts to realize about her versus society. I have one more big point that I'll make besides my criticisms. I'll shut up right now. I got one more point I want to make about the Amarillo, Texas scene. I'll save that for later. Joe, what say you?
Yeah, this right out the gate after I got done watching this, I was on a high. I was like, this was such a heartwarming documentary and everything. I loved it. And then like when I woke up today or when I woke up yesterday, because I watched this movie on Monday, I kind of like, started to feel like not too differently about it, but there were some things that I was like looking back on. I'm like, actually, wait, no, hold on. This I kind of had issues with, but I'll wait for your criticisms and then I'll share mine. The positives here is that I think this is a great documentary to watch. I think it does a great job at A, being entertaining, B, being an interesting subject matter, and from the get-go, you're on board with it, and you're just like, I actually want to see how this will play out. My favorite moments of this movie is how much this documentary actually, I think, did a good job at really, really selling the perspective of what Harper is going through. And the fact, like, what she's feeling in these scenes and how she feels going into something like an Indiana Pacers game, a dive bar in, Indiana or whatever it was. And they do such a good job at exploring the headspace that Harper was in before her transition and after it. And they share memos from her journal. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. They often just she opens herself up a ton in this documentary. She's very open about like, yeah, this is what I used to do. I used to wear women's clothes. I used to go here. I used to do this. I did that, and then you learn some more darker secrets about her. And it's really the most interesting part about the documentary is learning everything about her and really giving you an inside look of like where she's at in her head while.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube, talking Gladiator 2, the home stretch of our review. You can tell it's the home stretch of our review because I'm going to make a really stupid reference here. I'm going to make a really dumb reference. So this popped into my mind, unlocked a memory, as the kids say, that I forgot I had. I just have weird random moments of TV just like lodged in my head forever. And watching, it's been a while since I've seen a movie on ancient Rome. And I was reminded of the episode Team Trouble in Arthur. This is when, and it's actually a very relatable, I do remember the episode. Basically, Arthur, Buster, and Francine have to do an assignment on ancient Rome. They have to do like a group project. And it's like the typical thing where like Arthur tries to do too much. He doesn't let Francine help, and Buster doesn't do anything. It's like your typical like middle school group project dynamics.
Wait, I do remember this.
They're in band in one of the scenes. And Buster's like, for our report, why don't we do a song? And Buster plays the tuba. And he blows on the tuba and he goes, Ancient Rome, blows on the tuba. It's not like home, blows on the tuba again. Colosseum. And that popped into my head like a couple times watching this thing, and I blame that on drama. That's a little bit more filler than the spectacle, and not as satisfying as just the general spectacle of this. But yeah, it reminded me of Arthur, which is a very particular reference, a very specific reference.
An acquired taste, as some might say.
Thank you. An acquired taste, if you will. How do you follow that up?
I can't because I don't have any Arthur clips in the back of my head, man. But for me, God, I'm trying to think. I mean, what else is about this movie? I will say if there's one aspect I did like about this movie a ton, and you can tell me if you liked it too. I actually did like. Let me get the actress's name correct here. The returning actress, sorry.
Connie Nelson?
Connie Nelson, sorry. As Lucia. I thought that actually what they did with her, I thought that worked. And again, as you said, like, where, Mescal and the doctor, like, when they're on screen together, like, they had great chemistry and everything, and those are the best scenes of Lucius. I thought her scenes in Lucius, the only 2 to 3 that we really get, though, other than the screaming one where like they're yelling at each other, I was like, okay, that's just drama being drama. Like, it's just like, talking loud and everything. But I was like, the stuff they were doing with her, I thought was interesting, but they don't flesh her out enough. But I still thought, like, as a returning character, they actually did some good stuff with her.
I could agree. I think she's good here. I'm glad she came back. You know what's interesting, and I just noticed this really too before we go to closing thoughts. Here's what I think is interesting. So, if you remember, Lucius is actually in the original Gladiator. He's a child. And this movie takes place 16 years after Maximus's death. Okay. Yeah. So Lucius is a full-grown adult. I just looked this up while you were talking. Paul Mescal is 28 years old. So he's still pretty young. Like, I was going to say, I actually didn't expect him to be that young, but he's 28 years old. Spencer Treat Clark played Lucius, the kid, in the original movie. Yeah. Spencer Treat Clark is now 37 years old, but he's got like a boyish face.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder why they didn't cast him.
I don't know why either. I honestly thought about that too. I don't know who the kid was, but I just thought to myself, I'm like, I think he does act still. I'm like, so how come they never reached out to him?
He does. He was in the Weird Al Yankovic movie too. He played Steve J, the bassist. In the Weird Al movie. He was also in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. recently, too. And, like, you could make the argument, well, he's not a movie star, but neither's really Pedro Pascal. Like, Paul Mescal. I did it again. Paul Mescal got the nomination from the Oscars a couple of years ago for that movie After Sun. And I know he's done a lot of, like, more, like, esteemed indie movies. This is his biggest role, I would say. But like I said, he's not really a movie star either. So I'm wondering why they didn't get Clark back. I just think that's kind of weird. And I thought that would have been kind of cool because a lot of movies don't do that. Like especially these movies that are so long, they're so like long in development and shit like that. It's like you forget, the kid age too. Like, and he still acts. It's not like he was one of those child actors that only did like 3 roles and then quit. You know what I mean? So I just thought it just dawned on me right now. I'm like, I wonder why I'm like, did they even ask the kid to do it? Like, I say he's a kid, he's 37, but still. But yeah, just a thought there. But yeah, I was gonna say I want you to go first with closing thoughts though, because you definitely had more attachment to this because you were anticipating this. I was kind of just looking at this as like, oh, this is what I'm gonna see.
No, I was on Letterboxd. I always do this just as a little fun thing, just to see what movies are coming out in the upcoming year, and I can't wait to be doing it near the end of this month. But I always do like a top 20 most anticipated movies of like a year. And actually, if I pull that list up right now, that was on there, and I think I had it at least in the top 10. I had number 14. My bad. I had number. Hey, oddly enough, I had number 13 as Wicked, number 14 this, and I had no idea about what the release dates were gonna be. Number 2 is Nosferatu, and I can't wait to go see that still.
What was your number 1?
Oh, Furiosa.
Furiosa. Okay, I was wondering if it was going to be Deadpool and Wolverine. I was wondering.
No. I don't even. Is Deadpool and Wolverine? Surprisingly, no, it is on there. It's number 18. That was it. Yeah.
Wow, that's lower than I thought.
Well, I mean, it's just like it's a Marvel movie. It's like, as a fan of as I am of those movies, still like from time to time, it's just like I know what I'm getting. To tell you my top 5 real quick: Furiosa, Nosferatu, Dune Part 2, Quiet Place Day 1, Maxine.
That's a good top 5.
Yeah. Anyways,
Maxine would have probably been my top 3. Anyway.
Yeah, man, I was so excited for that movie. A little let down by that as well, but anyways, yeah. So Ridley Scott, to me, and I even said this in my Letterboxd review, you can tell the man got lost in his own sauce that he has. He had, but it's not a bad sauce to get lost in. It's tons of stuff in this movie looks great, and he directs it very well. He still has that director like energy in him and everything that I'm glad to see a man of his age is still making movies to this day. It's the same thing of like why I go to the theater to go see something. Like, even though I didn't like this movie, I would still go see it though. If I would still go see his next movie, but like it's the same reason why I get excited when I see from director Robert Zemeckis, from director Martin Scorsese, from director George Miller. I will go see those movies because it's like, look, man, I'm grateful that these guys are doing this still because they're legendary directors, and not many people their age who are directors still do this. And the fact they still have it in them to make something is a testament to them and their directing capabilities, especially something like this. I mean, this is a big blockbuster. It's got star power, it's got action power, it's got effects, costume, it's got all that. And everything spectacle-wise, I assure you will probably get nominated at the Oscars. Performances, characters, and writing and story and all that other stuff, not so much. It's definitely the weakest parts about this movie, other than the Denzel aspect. But everything else, I just kind of like slowly started getting bored. I really wish this movie was a tad bit shorter, maybe 20 minutes shorter. I wish they would have found a way to cut around that, maybe edit the story a bit more, that, we kept Mescal's identity a bit more secret than and then like the trailers always showed off and everything. Or you could have done what my idea was, and Denzel's the main character. I don't know. It's not my movie, though. It's not my responsibility. It's like, I'm not here to see my movie. I'm here to see Ridley Scott's movie. And for what I got, it's enjoyable, but I did find it rather disappointing. For me, it is a enthusiastic 2.5 out of 4 stars. I recommended people to go see it because I feel like general audiences have liked this movie, and so far everybody I told to go see it has come back and be like, dude, that movie was awesome, and yada yada yada. So it's like, yeah, I feel like general audiences are still gonna like this movie, but for me, a little bit of a disappointment, but still glad I got to see it, especially on the big screen and in IMAX.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on the star rating. It's 2.5 out of 4 from me.
Oh, nice.
I think
okay.
this is a service.
I thought you were gonna go a half higher than me, honestly.
Yeah, no, I'm at 2.5 on this thing. And I'm pretty firm. And I liked the direction. I really do. Like, Ridley Scott's just a classically minded director when it comes to staging and, these grand sweeping shots and things like that. And just like, he knows how to stage the hell out of movies. And I love that about him. The set design is awesome. It does feel like a lived in world. And again, I think Mescal is just muted, unfortunately, by the presence of Denzel, who is the scene-stealing force here, as we both agree. And I did like Pedro Pascal. I think he's a little limited.
I wish he got more screen time because this is kind of one of my favorite performances I've seen from him. It's a very stoic performance, and it's a bit of part of his character where he has to kind of balance himself between loyalty to the Emperor, but also I don't want to ruin what his storyline is actually about, but then loyalty to something else. And it's like, oh, this is interesting. Can we play this more? But he's not in the movie that much. And it's compared to everybody else, that's like, wow, we really did not flesh this out.
No, I agree with that. And I go back to saying that, like, if you're on the fence about taking in another Gladiator movie, I don't think many people are, but if you are, I highly recommend The Last Duel. That's even how I ended my review of the.
We are getting a Gladiator 3, so.
I know, I know, I know.
and,
Um,
and I'm not looking forward to it because I was kind of like, I feel like we're kind of running short on this, but I'll be there. Don't count me out. But it's not an anticipated movie for me.
yeah, that's not making your list in
No,
2028 or whenever the hell we get it.
hell no.
But no, I think that like this formula has been done by Scott better. And it's been done better it was done better in the last duel because in the
Yeah,
last duel, the one thing we didn't bring up in the beginning, just talking about that movie, the one thing I love about that movie is you really get three different perspectives on a tragic event.
I
It
think that
reminded me
movie.
of Wind River in that way, where like you really just get hyper focused on one singular event and it's told through multiple different perspectives with multiple different things at stake for three individual characters. And I just thought that was just a
Yes.
brave writing decision that comes full circle really strongly.
That's the best part about that movie is the fact that like it's you have three different narrators throughout that movie. You have Matt Damon's character, you have Adam Driver's, and you have Cotter. Um, forgot what her name is. You have three different perspectives. And in her part of the story is what makes it all come together. It's like we'll give you the whole context of everything and the whole underlying message with it. That movie to me also proves to me this that Ridley Scott has got it down to a T as a director. As a writer, he's 50-50. And I feel like if he can get somebody like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon again to help write out his scripts or be a script doctor at the very least, I feel like then like his stuff will have much more of a solid landing. Because I feel like that's just all he's missing is that. Like it's just a solid story and characters. Because it's like I'm not looking for like, the next big grand story or anything. It's just give me something to attach to, which this movie really didn't for me.
Curiously, the writer of this movie is David Scarpa. Scott does not have a story credit
Oh,
even on this thing,
okay.
which is interesting because I'm like, I have a hard time believing you could be attached to this thing for so long and not have any contributions to the story.
Well,
So
yeah, never mind. My mistake. I should have looked this up. He didn't have anything to do with the script or story on this.
I thought that was interesting though, that like, I'm like, you're so closely tethered to this. And like,
Yeah.
I would have thought at least have a story credit.
It
You know
seems
what
that
I
this is the guy that he's been making movies with too for a while because he did All the Money in the World and Napoleon as well.
That's right, because he had, yeah, I was gonna say he did all the money in the world. I forgot about that one. That was a good
Yeah,
one too. That was a good one that was kind of
yeah.
plagued by the whole Kevin Spacey removal thing.
And you know what?
But
Peter Craig has done stuff with Affleck because he's written what's it called? He wrote The Town with him, but more recently, like damn, I really wish like he kind of got that legacy sequel writing with him. He did Top Gun Maverick. He did the story for that, and he also wrote The Batman. So talk about like I know The Batman's not a sequel, but like to reboot that character again in such a unique way, and then you bring back Top Gun in such a big way. It's like kind of wish he also could do the same with Gladiator.
he's the Lego sequel doctor.
There you go.
He
He
really
did
is.
Bad Boys for Life as well.
That's our show tonight. I think for next week on the dock, it's Craven the Vampire Hunter, isn't it?
It's just Craven the Hunter. I don't know where the hell we got Craven the Vampire Hunter from because I was
Oh,
like
it
looking
is
at the
just Craven the Hunter, isn't it?
yeah. I was reading the title on the doc. I'm like Craven the Vampire Hunter, and then I saw the poster. I'm like, where the hell did we get the Vampire Hunter from? Although that sounds hard. I really wish that's what the movie was called.
Yeah, where the hell did we get that from? That is interesting.
Maybe we're
I don't
making
think
Morbius jokes. I don't know.
I feel like it's a Mandela effect sort of thing. I'm like, I swear to Christ, that thing was called Craven
Did,
the Vampire Hunter.
did you see the news about this movie though?
God, no, I didn't. I don't
This
think
is
I
it.
did.
This is Sony is done. This is the last entry of their cinematic universe. They're washing their hands clean of the
Is
Sony the
is it?
Spider-Man
Okay.
stuff.
Well, they're going out with a bang. It's got a 17% on Rotten
Oh
Tomatoes.
no!
They're going out with a bang.
The minute
Good
you said
God.
they're going out with a bang, I already knew you were going to refer to a tomato score and it wasn't going to be good.
They're going out with a bang at 17% with 48 critics. So that's a pretty good consensus right there.
Ah,
You know,
shit.
yeah,
Alright.
they couldn't even make it okay. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll find out.
I appreciate you hosting. It's great to have you back, Joe.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
so
for
much.
sure, man.
Thank you so much for being back, man. This was a really good show, and we end on time. We will be back next week for the unseen but still love Dominic Guanzon, Joe Viso, and yours truly. This has been Sleepless with Steve.